Well, hello everybody. Welcome into Great Atmosphere here on February 5th of 2024. Just wanted to get started today by looking at the contiguous U.S. True Color satellite from the College of DuPage. We have quite a few little events going on throughout the course of the country today. We do have the remaining day of our giant atmospheric river event that has been inundating the Southern California, well, all of California really, over the past 5 days, with some indicators that over 10 inches of rain have fallen in the upslopes, in particular regions surrounding the LA Metroplex. That is amazing and excuse me, quite scary. Because that is, generally speaking, they got half of their year's worth of rainfall within about a 24-hour pace. So I believe there have been some fatalities that have been already reported, some due to people getting into cars and not turning around and going into standing water, and then some due to landslides, which is also a very common thing with such a high amount of precipitation at once. But this system should start to move out here in the next 36 hours and begin to impact some areas in the greater Mountain West and the plains heading into the middle of our work week. We also have a strengthening remnant low that is coming out of the difluent flow of the upper level jet stream that is impacting the Gulf states, or has impacted the Gulf states this weekend. So a pretty strong tornado was reported in Valdosta, Georgia. Definitely going to have to take a closer look and see some of the analytics about how that particular system took place. But a little bit of a surprise there. Some severe thunderstorm warnings across north central Florida and primarily around the Gulf Coast. But that low is, generally speaking, starting to wrap around and converse itself over the Big Bend region of Florida and into the Gulf Stream, and should actually deepen out off the Carolina coast as we move forward in time. And it's already kind of doing that as well, due to some of the wind advisories that we're seeing over the central South Carolina state today. And we also have some fog that is dissipating off of the Great Lakes. We have cold air advection coming in off of this big low that's sitting off of Nova Scotia, and that ultimately is serving to bring cold air from that is sitting over Greenland more down into the New England region. One of the interesting things about the Great Lakes is that it's largely ice-free, which is kind of a problem. There is a good possibility now, if we continue this trend, that the Great Lakes might not even reach 50% ice cover, if at all, this entire winter, which would be quite a huge thing, because usually, especially Lake Superior and this part of Lake Huron, they typically ice over pretty reliably and shut off the lake effect snow and lake effect precipitation, weather phenomenon. That doesn't seem to be the case. It's total ice cover for all the lakes is barely at 8.5%. That is quite unprecedented for this particular particular region, and will be interesting to track and see if we get any more cold air. But as of right now, they're just sitting in the mid 50s, so you're not going to get any freezing lakes with weather like that above you. I'm sure everyone in that area is totally fine with it, but it's, from a climatological point of view, sometimes the bill comes due, and we'll see if those have lasting impacts going into the summer. We can take a look at the last 72 hours of precipitation. This is going to be continued to be added upon. Currently, Sierra Nevada and the mountains and the upslopes of the LA Metroplex are currently experiencing the highest amount of precipitation, 7 to 8 inches, pretty regular up there in those areas. And then we saw the remnants of our Gulf storm that came through, about 2.5 inches across the majority of the Ozarks, from East Texas all the way to the Georgia, South Carolina coast. Pretty much saw some precip from it, and then we remained dry in the Midwest and the Northeast, along with the north central plains as well, going through the weekend. Take a look at the national snowfall analysis. We can see that the Sierra Nevada are certainly getting a fair share. I did see one weather.gov forecast for the Yosemite National Park region saying that the area was expected to experience 45 to 51 inches of snow in a 8-hour period, which is terrifying. because I think over the course of the whole system, they're expected to get maybe 6 to 8 feet of snow, which is crazy. That's a whole person's worth of snow in the matter of a weekend. That's pretty nutty. So these atmospheric rivers, they in the Pineapple Express that comes from the Hawaiian archipelago, just delivers that moisture, and it's just a fire hose effect. Pretty interesting to watch as well over satellite, but quite terrifying for the people that are maybe not entirely used to experiencing such high precip rates in both the frozen and liquid mediums in that particular region. But we also have greater Mountain West snowfall as well. We see the Rockies in general up into Montana, all the way down into the Santa Fe region of New Mexico and into the Flagstaff area of Arizona. Those areas are experiencing generalized snowfall as well. Not so much in the Cascadian Plateau. They get a little bit of a break after what they experienced with the icing about a month ago, but ultimately they are not as bad off as they were, with some light dustings from lake effect and other ancillary dustings and whatnot, traces in the New England area or the Northeast for the weekend. Take a look at what we are expecting from the Euro in terms of expected precipitation values as we go through the week. We can see the remainder of the atmospheric river events start to push through. The upper jet starts to push more towards into the Mountain West and the Central Plains, which triggers off our next round of storms, or not necessarily storms, just rain shield events as we go forward. And then we expect the Southeast to start to get a little bit more wet as we head into the weekend, according to the Euro, and into the beginning of next week. As of right now, with totals about 1.5 inches perhaps in some of those localized storms. Taking a look at what we're looking at in terms of the season to date's normal snowfall. So this begins on September 30th, and then it just kind of shows you areas that are above average and below average for snow in this particular guidance. So in this we're seeing in the deep reds a lot of zeros and ones. That would be areas that have yet to see snowfall. So we see the majority of the Southeast, with the exception of far northwestern Alabama and northern Mississippi, and the majority of actually Tennessee have seen, those areas have seen significant snowfall well above average for the year due to the upslope event that we saw in early January that brought moisture and cold air at the same at the same time as the forcing that was evident with the Panhandle lows that came out of the Central West or Central Mountain West. So, but it's going to be an interesting thing, just because I know for a lot of these areas they have not received 2 consecutive years of no snowfall. Particularly in the Charlotte region, I know that they've recorded at least a trace every other year since that recording has began back in like the 1870s. So this, if we continue our warm pattern here, we only have probably another month and some change maybe before we break that record, because the last snowfall in the region, I believe, came in January of 2022. So that is it doesn't seem like that far long ago, but it would be 2 years ago. And they have no snow here in the spring and the winter spring months of 2024 would be a sign of the times, I would say, for sure. It's a record that definitely will be broken at some point, and seems to be perhaps closer than originally anticipated as we go forward. But also, we see some areas that have received some snowfall, that lake effect off of the reservoirs around Dallas and up in near the Shreveport area of Louisiana. Some areas that we would normally see, but also quite anomalous here in the Midwest as well above average in the Northeast. I know we had those early lake effect storms, but ultimately it's just been too warm for them to get any actual kind of frozen precipitation. And then in the farther northern plains, from Montana all the way over into the UP of Michigan, generally speaking, well below average. And this California one, I'm sure, will ultimately change quite quickly. As this map receives more data as we move forward. Taking a look at the all hazards, we can see that flood advisories go out for the majority of California and to western Arizona. Winter storm warnings as we get up into the Rocky Mountain Plateau. Generally speaking, everything will come down as frozen precipitation in those particular regions. And then over here, we have fog advisories and flood advisories around in Lincoln, Nebraska, but ultimately nothing really to report across the majority of the contiguous U.S., with results with the exception of a area of the Delaware River, which I believe actually crested over the weekend. And then also some wind advisories in southwestern Louisiana the central South Carolina region, and into Augusta, Georgia. I believe that was issued for the majority of the CAE NWS DMA. That is generally due to actually something at that low that is forming off the Carolina coast. Ultimately, when we're looking for where we expect for significant wind advection to take place, we look for our surface map here, and ultimately that is areas where these isobars are tightly packed together. Will ultimately emulate where the highest amount of wind would be. Some areas I know in the South Carolina region are expecting gusts up to 40-45 miles an hour, I believe, and we can actually take a look perhaps at that wind speed maximum that we're expecting here over the next couple of days. We'll refresh the page real quick just to make sure that we're getting the right data here from the NAM 3 kilometer model. And we can see that as this low starts to form, we get gale force winds off the Carolina coast, and as it forms out more to sea, you can see it gets out to 78, 76 mile an hour. That's technically hurricane force winds. It's not an actual hurricane. It's a cold core system. It's just a deepening low pressure system over warm Gulf Stream waters in winter. Like that, it looks like a hurricane, but technically speaking, it is not, as it does have a cold core to it. But ultimately, you see these green values right here. This is up in the mid 40s regions for cumulative max wind gusts in miles per hour. So 45 miles an hour wind gusts are nothing to they're nothing to scoff at. And we can see what those winds look like. We can see that generally that those two dueling low pressure systems off of both sides of Florida, generally speaking, getting these wind vectors out of the northeast into the southwest, and coming down the Mississippi River Valley as well. Generally speaking, creating quite a significant windy day over a cloudless sky. And then we can see the upper level patterns as well. We're in a very distinct trough ridge pattern. So we have our high over low set up here. We have our high, and then we have our low, and we have ultimately, if we cut our quasi-geostrophic motion here, we're in difluence, which would be where the low ultimately would form, and that is the same. In this particular product over here, where the jet stream maximum is. This is where the low forms here, and that is ultimately what is driving the atmospheric river. And this is still called a Rex block technically, just because we do have that high pressure flow that's going in a clockwise motion. That is ultimately a blocking pattern that has been gradually making its way across the CONUS for the past probably week, and that has, generally speaking, created a situation where we're just stuck under nice weather for the most part here in the eastern part of the U.S., and mild temperatures as well as we go forward. So taking a look at what we're expecting out of the NAM over the next 60 hours, we see the end of the atmospheric river here in California. Can move forward just a little bit. See all that snow that's being dumped over the central Nevada regions. Eventually the dry slot comes in and saves Los Angeles, and ultimately kind of cuts off the fire hose as the majority of the forcing starts to make its way over the Mountain West. But you can see for the majority of the southeast, we remain high and dry for the remainder of the week before we get another similar pattern set up coming in the next days, according to our Euro GFS comparison here. So if we move forward and ahead to past this weekend, we can see high pressure starts to build in again. But ultimately, this is a pattern that we actually saw a couple of weeks ago. As that high pressure starts to build in, it'll start to move off of the coast and do something along these lines. We'll see our high sit right here, and ultimately it'll serve to open up the Gulf. So it'll bring in Gulf air. We have a low that'll form. Actually, it's a pretty interesting low setup that both the models are predicting to form in the Dakotas, and then make its way up into the Ontario territory. But ultimately, that is going to serve to drive and push all this warm air all the way up and into almost touching the Hudson Bay. I mean, they're expecting rain all the way up here in January, or actually February, to not be a wintry precip. So quite significant. But also, this starts to trigger on the back end some more cold air coming in off that edge, and will ultimately serve to create a pretty significant cold front that will come in starting in the weekend. So move forward in time just a little bit more just to see what the timings look like. You can see that the GFS is not as bullish on the rain in terms of the southeast for Saturday, but then we start moving into the latter portions of the weekend. GFS starts to light up, and the euro is a little bit late, more of a Monday storm for the euro. So interesting little setup there. Both of them have been recovering in terms of their accuracy, as opposed to what we saw originally. And what can we expect here over the next few? Well, we can take a look at the 200 millibar heights to see where that jet streak is currently sitting. So we'll move forward here. So we have our current setup that's going to be in place. We see that upper level jet pattern do its little undulation here, and then go back down over the southeast. That's where we would expect the lows to form. So off the coast of California, and then off the coast of the Carolinas. Ultimately, we'll move forward and see where this ends up. We see that the jet maximum kind of starts all the way over here in Egypt, makes its way across the entire Eurasian subcontinent, off the coast of Japan, where the main jet streak max will sit, and ultimately serve to be our North Pacific jet retraction that normalizes weather patterns here in the in the CONUS regions of North America. So we'll move forward, kind of see maybe what it's expecting. This is not generally, let's see, this is the euro. Yeah, I might get a better look actually at the European anomaly here. So as we've kind of been tracking when the next shot of cold air is expected to come through, we see a lot of cold air that's currently situated over Greenland and Alaska, and the only way to really shove out cold air in those particular regions is if we get significant ridging to displace it. And ridging in this particular Euro anomaly, or Euro ensemble, is showing areas that are in these deep reds and oranges. Those are ridges and high pressure, and then the lows and troughs will be simulated by the blues. So in this particular set of circumstances, we see that eventually, as we go out further enough in time, we do get ridging on both Greenland and Alaska way out. This is Thursday, February 15th, 10 days in advance. But if that ridging has been in place for a while, in terms of like what I would kind of want is, I would kind of want to see more of a ridging event that goes down and into the Hudson Bay here. Ultimately, then that will push the onus of the trough axis from here and puts it more down to here. That would create much more of the energy forcing that the southeast at least would need. And ultimately, so this is more of like an energy. You think of the Greenland area as the energy, and think of the Alaska ridge right here. So we can see that this with this ridging, we would expect the cold air to be displaced, and then with high pressure building in right here, we would expect that to kind of open up the Arctic and bring down cold air as well. So we get our energy and we get our cold air. After we get both of those things, theoretically by middle of the month, then it becomes an issue of moisture, and that comes down to placement of the subtropical jet. And ultimately where that North Pacific jet extension is. If the jet extension is way over here in Japan still, or the jet itself, it's more retracted and near Japan, it's going to be a lot harder to get the moisture necessary to unlock the Gulf and create a system where we would get we would be able to break our snow drought or snout here in the southeast. So it's interesting little things to look at. We can see what the CPC is currently predicting, and they are saying that temperature, those ensembles they're in agreement that there is a change coming in the 8 to 4. You can see in the 6 to 10 day. Generally speaking, the majority of the U.S. is a little above average for precip, and then the eastern portion is above average for temperature. But we get out into 2 weeks, and we see that the cold air is generally returning in the south and the southeast, but we get dry air as well, and that doesn't help anybody. It's just, no one wants cold and dry; they want cold and snow. So it's not the best outlook in the world. Weeks 3 to 4 still below average, which is a good thing. The longer the cold air can be, the greater the chance we have. Equal chances for precipitation, though. And then we have our seasonal outlooks, 1 month in the future, pretty near normal and on pace for a typical El Nino situation, actually. And then we look into the spring, near normal with above average precipitation, also quite indicative of a strong El Nino year, which is what our year was just dictated as. It was, technically speaking, a strong El Nino for this winter period. And just that, it seems that the CPC is generally deferring to typical El Nino analogs here. Probably means that our tropical teleconnections are not doing a great job in terms of giving us a good understanding of what to expect here. Quite not a lot of confidence from what I'm seeing from my fellow forecasters in those particular regions. We can take a look at what the temperatures are going to look like over the next 5 days. Generally speaking, all anomalous temperatures. We have the Midwest hitting the 50s, even 60s. Ridiculous for early February. We hold on to the cool air in the southeast for a little bit through Thursday before we get a little bit of a warm up as the weekend comes by. But by that time, we also expect a little bit more precipitation as well. So we might get one nice day in the warm sector, but ultimately southeast will stay seasonable climatological temperatures before we get our next rain event moving into the latter portions of the weekend. And we can take a look perhaps at what the GFS ensemble is predicting in terms of temperature. GFS was actually the first ensemble to kind of notice this potential temperature change in place. They are expecting here in the 5 to 10 days a generalized split over the continent. We have cooler air in the west, and we have anomalously warm air in the east. But then we move ahead into day 10 and 15, and that cold air certainly returns in force. And we can see that the ultimate perpetrator of that would be we have warmer in Greenland and Alaska, and by that virtue we have Arctic air being shunned in down the Canadian prairie up and against the Rocky Mountains, and hopefully into, and of course this area it would be normal for them to have that kind of cold air for the year, so that's why it's white. But you see that the air gets pushed all the way into the southeast, and that's why those areas are blue, because it's anomalous to them. So cold air is definitely, I think it's fairly confident to say there is a pattern change that's coming. Timing is an issue. Timing is still an issue in terms of when it's coming and in what kind of force. But this is a signal that we've seen for a week or two now, and ultimately, if we want to get that snow and the in the southeast, we definitely need something like this to occur. Can't have anything without the cold temperatures. So, folks, that's it for today. And once again, my name is Zach for Great Atmosphere. I appreciate you tuning in. I'll be doing forecasts like this, particularly centered around the southeast U.S. Every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. I certainly do appreciate your time and your subscription to the channel, and I will see you again this week on Wednesday. Have a good night. Bye-bye.